everyone. Welcome to Lunch Without Lunch. I was kind of waiting a bit to get started because there's a really loud truck in my alley, and you'll probably hear it through the course of the introduction. So I apologize. So welcome to Lunch Without Lunch. I'm Amber Rowden, the community storyteller here at Rainforest Alberta in Calgary. Bridget Legault is here as well. She is the community manager at Rainforest Alberta in Calgary. So if you're new to Lunch Without Lunch, please share an emoji on the screen. Introduce yourself in the chat. We really want to get to know you and know who you are. If you've been around, also introduce yourself in the chat. It's all about connecting and making those collisions and connecting and building ideas. So I want to start with a land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. If you're coming from somewhere else in the country, in the province, please, or the world, please feel free to share a land acknowledgement in the chat. And we thank you for taking the opportunity to engage and demonstrate reconciliation. And if you're interested in sharing a land acknowledgement or what reconciliation means to you at the beginning of Lunch Without Lunch or in the Rainforest community, please connect with me and Bridget. We would love to share that and hear from you and talk about what that can look like. Again, I'm so sorry for the noise in the background. This truck is just chilling right outside.
We can't really hear it. I can't hear it anyways.
Okay, fantastic. Great. It's just me. So what is Rainforest Alberta? Well, we are a community of entrepreneurs, of people who are building a culture of trust and diversity and support each other on our innovation journeys. And so we have a little video here to explain kind of what Rainforest Alberta is.
What does it take to realize an idea? Or for a seed to sprout? At Rainforest Alberta, we know the answer is rooted in trust. Traditionally, Albertans have cultivated their ideas in established systems. Inputs that don't fit these systems are weeded out. Opportunities for growth are missed. But now, Albertans want a dynamic landscape that can evolve organically, like a rainforest. At Rainforest Alberta, we believe a culture of trust is the fertile soil where ideas grow. Our budding innovation ecosystem is a network of relationships pulling each other up as they push forward in their own field. Trust breaks down barriers. An open, inclusive network increases collaborative innovation. Successful breakthroughs inspire new ideas. A cycle begins. Rainforest Alberta is a movement to amplify trust by cultivating honesty, inclusion, and accountability. How? Our social contract holds us accountable to demonstrate trust across the province. We meet to have honest conversations around collaboration. This leads to more inclusive spaces for everyone to fearlessly build new ideas together. By raising the standard of trust, Alberta's ideas, talent, and resources can be evergreen. Visit rainforestab.ca to sign the social contract and start growing together.
So we use 6 pillars to guide our conversations and actions, and not all are weighted equally. We use these 6 pillars to measure each year to measure our scorecard assessment to assess the strengths and weaknesses within the Calgary tech ecosystem. So at the Rainforest, culture, we focus on the most at 30%. Leaders are 20%, resources 15%, engaged activities are 10%, policy and infrastructure 15%, and role models are 10%. So tips to making the most out of Lunch Without Lunch. Introduce yourself in the chat, what you're working on, what you're looking for, what you can offer. Just share more about yourself in the chat. That's what we're here to get to know each other and to make those collisions. Connect with individuals through direct messaging. Put your camera on. Always great to see everyone's face. Ask questions that lead with curiosity rather than offering advice. Ask questions to our speaker today and keep connecting on our digital community. I'll be talking about that more after, but that's a great place to, if you have questions that you're curious about from today, you can keep that conversation going on that community. Check out #lunchnotes for a capture of today's chat, which is on our Slack channel, and our recordings are always posted on YouTube, so you can watch them again. So each week we highlight value from our social contract. And as the video mentioned, the social contract are 10 values that we live, work, and play by. They keep us accountable. They are a way to help grow us as individuals. It's a commitment to being a good person, to growing companies. And so this week it's about paying it forward. So the value is I agree to pay forward whatever positive benefits I receive, but the community is a great place to pay it forward. You know, if someone takes you out for coffee and offers you an idea or spends time with you, that's a great place for you to pay it forward to someone else that's newer in the community. So if you scan that barcode, that'll take you to our social contract, and I'll also throw the link in the chat. So our digital community is a great place to ask questions. Anything you're curious about, if you're curious about the tech and innovation industry, if you're looking for an investor, if you're looking for a co-founder, if you're curious about something you heard today or a previous Lunch Without Lunch, if you're curious about what's happening in the ecosystem, this is a great place to connect with individuals that can directly answer those questions. AI matches you to those people and you get a question answered right away. And it's been such a valuable community platform for us and for the community. And it's great to just keep connecting. So if you scan that barcode, that'll take you to the digital community platform. And I will also throw the link in the chat. So today, I'm really excited to have our guest speaker, Julie Hawco, talk about the STEM Moms Project. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Julie to share today.
Thank you, Amber. And thank you for everyone who has joined us today. So I'm just going to share screen. If I could get a thumbs up when you all are good. Yeah, good. Perfect. Okay, so thanks to Amber and Bridget for the invite today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the STEM Moms Project as soon as I can get my computer. Okay, so first off, you're probably wondering, let me introduce myself. I'm Julie Hawco. I'm an engineer predominantly in the energy industry in kind of a tech and innovation adjacent role. And I'm also the mother of 2 children, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And you're probably wondering, well, why is somebody so passionate about this very niche and specific topic? And I can tell you that honestly, for the first 6-7 years of my career, I just felt like I was killing it as a woman in STEM. A lot of the issues that people talked about didn't really resonate with me, and I didn't really feel impacted. And that really changed when it came time to start a family. My husband is also an engineer, so it was quite a contrast to kind of compare the differences. And that really caused me to kind of reflect on, well, why wasn't I impacted for all of these years? And a lot of it led to the support systems that I had in place and the people that helped to support me. So right after I returned to work after my 2nd child, I heard about this mid-career leaky pipeline of women in STEM. And I actually participated in a focus group with Engineers Canada. And in my interview, I questioned them and said, are you looking at the transition from professional to working parent as being a contributing factor? And their response was, oh, not exactly, we're just trying to gather all of the facts. And so after that, I started to hear that tech was having the same issue, that tech was also having an issue with the retention of mid-career women. And in my own personal circles, so my friends, people I worked with, my peers from school, was hearing the same thing, that being a woman in a male-dominated space, that once you were trying to transition with these parental leaves and having a child and then having all of these additional responsibilities, that it was really tough. So I wanted to volunteer with an organization that was doing something about this. And I went on a year-long endeavor of connecting with people and looking on websites and trying to find a program that specifically had something for mothers who were also STEM professionals. And while there's a lot of organizations there's a lot of organizations that are specific to women in STEM. There wasn't a lot that were working on this motherhood. So in February 2022, I kicked off the STEM Moms Project. And, you know, I just did a LinkedIn post one day and I said, hey, I want to dive into this. I want to understand all the contributing factors. I want to know what are the challenges? Why do they exist? Really like a puzzle. Let's really sort it out. And then let's focus not on changing the woman, right? We don't want to feed this deficiency. The woman needs to change herself. We want to actually change the systems. And so can we identify specific supports and actions for impactful change to help women thrive and to help women stay within these STEM professions? And so what happened was people responded to my LinkedIn post, they sent me messages, and so I created a Slack group. And within the Slack group, people would introduce themselves. They'd say, I want to be involved in this project because, and every because ended up being like a barrier or a challenge. And it was really driven by people wanting to create change for people coming behind. They're saying, I went through this. I don't want others to go through this. So I want to share my experiences to make better outcomes for others. So initially we used Slack and then also used Google Forms so that I could share via LinkedIn and Instagram and get more input. And then different people helped out within the project to kind of summarize the findings from each discussion. And through that, we were identifying, you know, what are some actions for allies to create change moving forward. And so what I'm going to share here today is very much kind of the findings from all of these discussions. Sorry, I'm going to move my chat to my other screen here because I'm not able to follow along in all the chats. Okay, so we got through 15 topics in a year. And so here they are. Here are the 15 topics. I'm not going to read through all of them. But, you know, initially when the project kicked off, it was really asking the question if motherhood is correlated to the women in STEM retention issue. And, you know, I don't think that we can definitively say yes, but what we can say is, taking it back to first year physics, if you think of constructive interference, is if someone is going through a challenge already, you know, being a woman in a male dominated space, and now you're going to add this parenthood layer on top of it. And, you know, children have two parents, so it shouldn't just be the mother, but there's a lot of factors within societal expectations. It really amplifies those challenges that the woman was already experiencing. And for some people, it can kind of be like the straw that broke the camel's back. If someone was already feeling like they didn't belong, or they didn't fit in, or, you know, they didn't have access to role models, or they couldn't see a future, sometimes having the break of the parental leave and being away really instigates this, I guess, process where, you know, a woman is kind of keen to say, well, I'm going, do I belong here? Is this where I want to be? Is this worth it, sort of deal? And so, you know, being the only is a really great example. So topic number 10, if you are the only woman and you feel like you don't belong, and now you become the only mother and you have all of these added challenges, then it kind of becomes even worse. Burnout culture is similar. If you were having difficulty, you know, operating in an environment where you had to be on all the time and available, and you were feeling really burnt out, now if you're going to have that added responsibility of having to rush home to pick up your kids and all of the associated responsibilities that comes with the child, that is also going to be pretty difficult. Okay, next slide. So I have a set of 3 recommendations and findings I'm going to share here today. And so the first recommendation is really based off of that year that I was trying to find an organization that really was focused on supporting mothers in male-dominated spaces that didn't exist. And so what I found is, when it comes to STEM, there's a multitude of programs that are focused on early career. And then there's a lot that are also focused on leadership. And if you are mid-career, it doesn't matter if you're a parent, doesn't matter if you're a woman, but in general, the mid-career support is somewhat lacking. So I don't know if that resonates with anyone here on the line. I think in tech is pretty good because there's a lot of like community focused initiatives, and Rainforest is a fantastic example of an organization constantly bringing people together and creating these events to create collisions, and that's fantastic. And I think that the STEM space could probably benefit from a little bit more of that, especially you know, can they include elements of motherhood within their programming? So I'm thinking like, you know, at conferences or on panels, perhaps it will be a good idea to have people speaking on these specific topics. So moving on to recommendation number 2, and this really has been the main output of the project. So for anyone who's been following along in the Instagram or LinkedIn pages, you will have seen our actions for allies that have been shared throughout the past year. And so question number 1 is, who can be an ally? And the answer is basically anybody. So the participants in the project helped to form this mind map to identify who are the people that we are interacting with every single day in our work and our home lives, and who has the power to support and to help alleviate some of these barriers for STEM mothers. And I'd like to point out that there's really 2 main players here, and one is your direct leader in your job. This is the person who is helping you to set boundaries and setting the expectation. This is the person who's making sure your workload is appropriate, and you know, who's putting you forward for promotion, speaking your name, hopefully in a room full of opportunities. And the second person is your co-parent. And so that's the person at home. And I hope that there's an equitable division of parenting responsibilities as well as household and home responsibilities as well. So the actions for allies have been split into 4 separate themes. And so the first theme that I'd like to review is safe environment. So these are talking about things like psychological safety. And for anyone who's not sure what psychological safety is, that means, you know, are you operating in a space where you can ask for what you need without fearing negative repercussions? And so a great example of this would be if somebody's coming back from a parental leave and they're, you know, really stressed out about that, if they were to go to their leader and say, hey, I'm wondering, could I come back on a reduced work schedule, maybe 4 days a week? Is that a possibility? So in a psychologically safe environment, the answer might be no, and the leader might give a very valid reason as to why that isn't a possibility, but there's no negative repercussions, right? This woman now is not fearing that her manager is making an assumption that she's not prioritizing her career, taking it seriously. On the flip side, you know, if the answer was no, and now the woman is going to be negatively affected because now the manager is going to say, who does this person think they are? This is not appropriate. They're not taking their career seriously. And now their view changes. That is not a psychologically safe environment. Not making assumptions is another great one. So this is even amongst your teammates. So a great example is if you're on leave and your team just never reaches out to you because they assume that you're on leave and you don't want to be bothered. It's so much nicer if your team includes you. If you're not able to make it, that's okay, but at least you still feel connected to your job. You still feel connected to your employer and your teammates. And then another really great action for allies is to share your own story, which can really only happen in a safe environment. And so a perfect example of this is, you know, for myself now, I'm back to work. My oldest is almost 4. And so when I know other people are going on leave, I connect with them and just to let them know, like, hey, I went through this. This was a challenging time for me. Here are some of the things that helped. Here are some of the things that I encountered. Maybe you will never encounter them, but just so you know, maybe now you can prepare. And a lot of times it just creates that validation. If others are struggling, it helps them to know, oh, this isn't an individual problem. Others have gone through this, and it helps them to manage effectively getting through the same challenge. The second theme is in terms of leadership. So if you're a leader and you have parents within your team, you know, the use of compassionate curiosity is really great. And that's really empathy and putting yourself in other people's shoes. So for instance, let's say you have an employee who's really struggling to make a 7:30 team call every single morning. The leader could just assume, oh, this person's not dedicated, and really like dock them in performance because they're not showing up to this 7:30 meeting. But a better approach would be for that leader to reach out to inquire, well, you know, is there something at play here? Is there some reason? Perhaps 7:30 is school drop-off time. Maybe there's some sort of issue they can't balance with the other parent. But really just taking the time to pause and to think and to consider all of the factors at play if somebody in your team might be struggling with an issue, and really trying to help them instead of kind of placing blame and writing them off. Also, you know, as a leader, kind of leading with vulnerability and also sharing, you know, if you struggle with something. If we are not comfortable to share what we're struggling with, we're not going to be able to ask and receive the help we need to thrive. And so it's really important for leaders to encourage and accept vulnerability. Next is workplace cultures. This is huge. I could talk about workplace cultures all day long. So one of the big actions that came out of our project for many of the topics was related to workplace flexibility. And I could bucket workplace flexibility into two categories. There's kind of like the routine. So in routine, you could think of people that work on reduced work schedules for a set basis, right? So maybe 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week. Maybe they've altered their hours. So their hours are like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. so that they can make the school drop off and everybody knows at 3 p.m. this person is not available. It would also include work from home. So maybe you get a couple of days a week and everybody knows 2 days a week you're going to be at home and they know what days they are. Occasional flexibility is more like my kid is sick, I need to stay home. I can't come in today, but I'm still working and I'm here and I'm available, but I can't be in the office, right? It's also, I needed 2 hours on a Thursday because my kid's annual dentist appointment is up and I have to get into the dentist, the doctor, I have a school meeting, etc. And this isn't saying that you don't work or you're asking for 2 hours off. It's saying I need to alter my schedule this week to accommodate that, and having that being encouraged and accepted in your workplace. To be honest, it feels almost embarrassing to share some of these, because if you work in a workplace where this is acceptable, you're probably like, yeah, like, of course, who doesn't have that? But I can tell you, based off the project contributions of an entire year, 15 discussions, there's a lot of places where managers do not operate with this type of culture. Boundary setting is also really important. If everyone in your team sets boundaries and that's the norm, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable also setting that boundary. And that might look like, I got to leave at 4 o'clock every day because I need to pick up my kids, but I came in early, but please don't book a meeting after 4 because it's blocked out in my calendar. And so are your teammates respecting that? Are they booking meetings when they know that you're not available, even though you're a key contributor to that meeting? Is your manager encouraging you to set these boundaries? And then in general, just having like supportive work-life integration cultures at work is really important. Making sure that there's, you know, personal and professional development and that the employees are really set up to thrive. And so the last theme for the Actions for Allies is mentorship. I'm not sure what you all think of when you think of mentorship, but I found that people always think of like this formal long-term arrangement, but mentorship does not have to be that. It can be formal, it could be informal, it could be a coffee one time where you have a discussion with someone who's maybe a year or two behind you and they take away you know, 1 or 2 little snippets from what you've shared, and now they're able to incorporate them into their work and their career. It's also just making connections. Are you connecting people within your network? You know, 2 people who might be in the same stage that if they meet and they chat, they're going to feel really great because now they know somebody else who's going through something that you've gone through. It could be connecting people with career opportunities. Maybe you know a hiring manager and you know somebody who's had an extended career break who's looking to get back in, who'd be a fantastic candidate. Can you connect these people? Career gaps for parents is huge because there's a lot of challenges associated with career gaps. There's a lot of assumptions that these people are not taking their career seriously. And chances are, you know, they put a pause for a certain period and now they're ready to get back. And anyone who's made that decision to come back is probably very committed and probably going to be a really fantastic employee. Mentorship can also be sharing resources, sharing it on your LinkedIn, sending someone a message that you know is looking to maybe pivot their career, sharing about network opportunities, inviting someone to join you to a network opportunity. Like these are so simple that It feels ridiculous, right? At face value, but when you talk to people, some people, they don't feel comfortable to attend a network event, and having someone reach out and encourage them to come. Having a call or meeting for a coffee and sharing, about others' experiences can be kind of the motivation that they need to take the steps to do to get them back in the game, or to even just change their mindset when it comes to their careers. So what I've shared thus far, the first two recommendations are very much what I would call reactive solutions. So really like, how do we fix the status quo? But throughout the project, there was some really common themes around, what proactive approaches can we, mindset shifts, can we propose that don't require any incentive, that are good for everybody, regardless of gender, regardless of caregiving status. And so I've come up with a few for consideration today. I want to talk about the continuous career assessment for a full career life cycle. So when we're in school, you put a lot of thought into, what do I want to do with my life? What is it that I like to do? What kind of career do I want? And then you get on the career treadmill and you probably don't really think about it a whole lot more than that, right? And so often what kind of was revealed in our conversations is having a massive change, like becoming a parent or getting laid off, forces you to ask these questions of, well, what am I good at? Like, what is my brand? What do I like to do? And what are your selling points and selling features? This is really difficult to do in a time of, say, like crisis, if you've just been laid off, or, if you just had a kid and you return to work and you're really not happy with your job, but you're so time strapped that you just don't know how to go through the analysis. And so the point is, what if we taught younger generations to continually do this every few years, to check in? Do I like what I'm doing? Do I like where I am? Am I where I expected I want it to be? Because once this is a learned process, it's like a muscle, right? If you use it, you're going to know. So in that time of crisis, if you need to revert, you're going to exactly know what you need to do to get yourself back on track. And the same can be said for work-life integration. What I have found is when it comes to work-life balance and work-life integration, this is really something that you don't know till you're tossed into the deep end. So it's very much like, oh no, I need to manage all of these things, but I don't know how to do it because I've never done it before. And I think that this is changing with the younger generations. It seems to me that it is, but it would be great if in the early career, if you could, take an hour off to go play hockey, go for a run in the middle of the day because that's what you want to do. And the thing is, if people in our teams, especially younger people, are doing this, it's going to alleviate the stressors on the parents who absolutely have to do this because they have no other choice. The other thing is that it's going to really set up those younger generations to be able to ride this wave much easier. Again, it's just like the muscle. It's a learned process. If you know how to do it in times of stress, it's going to be a lot easier to revert to using it versus if you've never gone through this process before. Excuse me, I'm almost finished, trust me. Okay, so next up, I want to ask, if you think about yourself in your career and in your life, do you consider yourself to be a rock star or a superstar? So Kim Scott, in her book, Radical Candor, she talks about rock stars and superstars. And superstars are people that are always going for that next promotion. They want that next opportunity. They're rising the corporate ladder. They're very driven. And then you have your rock stars. And in a technical space, my personal experience that I have found, a lot of people are rock stars. They're very technically strong. They like what they do. They're subject matter experts. They might stay in a role or at a company for a long time. And I would argue that they add as much value as the superstars. But as a society, who do we put on a pedestal? We put the superstars on a pedestal. And so when you go to events and you hear about, people on panels, it's all like, we want to hear from the leaders and how'd you get into leadership? And everything is about leadership, but not everybody actually wants to be in leadership. And so what I found in the discussions is that a lot of people, when they get to the mid-career, they might even be happy in the role that they're in, but they have this perception that if they don't hold a management or a leadership title, they're not successful. And so that can really you know, that can play on your conscience. You're in this role, you're really struggling because you have these kids at home. You're not where you think you should be. Even if you're happy, you're discounting that, because as society, we really only value leaders and management. And so what I'm proposing is, as a society, we need a mindset shift to value what I'm calling untitled leaders. We need to recognize them, we need to value, and then we need to support. And so as a leader, a leader needs to recognize who's a rock star and who's a superstar. They need to be able to notify the rock stars, you know, let them know that they add value, let them know that it's a viable career path, and then support them, right? These are the people who probably have fantastic work-life integration, who feel really successful in their work-life balance. And I think when you look at life success as a whole, you know, is everyone wanting to get to the C-suite? I don't think so. But is everyone wanting some semblance where they can have a great career and a great family life? I think the answer is probably yes. And lastly, my last point here is, one of the big learnings from the STEM Moms Project was that when people think about, when they hear it, they think, oh, that's moms, that doesn't apply to me. And as long as we continue to talk about motherhood and working motherhood being a mom's problem, it's going to remain a mother's problem. And in reality, many working mothers have working father co-parents, okay? And so what I'm arguing here is that we need to talk more about dual working parents. We need to talk about dual career households. We need to normalize it. In the couple of years that I've kind of been really active in this space, I haven't seen one event that, you know, highlights dual working parents. And really, like, these are private topics. Not everyone's comfortable. Not everybody wants to be really transparent about their personal life. But if we don't talk about it, we're not going to make any progress. And so the dads, we need dads to parent out loud. Dads at work, they need to talk about their child demands. They need to talk about how they share the load with their wives. One, because it makes it better for the women in their group, but two, it's going to be a role model for the other men in their group as well. And you know what? Having active, involved dads who are able to get home for soccer games and share the pickups and drop-offs is good for families, right? It's good for workplaces, good for diversity. It is just all around good. And so I don't really know what the answer is here, but I do know we need to do something in the space of dual working parents to normalize that this is actually really challenging, and that it's not just for mothers, it's for both parents. So I'll summarize kind of the three things that I've gone through today. One, we need more support for mid-career individuals, not just women, mid-career individuals as a whole. And so, you know, if you think of all of the not-for-profit organizations and industry associations, and even for-profit businesses, employee resource groups, huge, right? Can they in some way implement some form of you know, working parent content, just an event, maybe an annual event, just something to ensure that this group is supported. Two, I shared the 4 themes for actions for ally. So, you know, maybe you're not a parent, maybe you're not a woman. There's still so much that you can do in the advocacy space. You can support the people in your teams. You can take some of the actions I shared today to create more inclusive teams. And then thirdly, proactive approaches. So I shared about the full career life cycle assessment, and then also, for full career life cycle, talking about that continuous assessment. Do I like what I do? Am I enjoying it? Am I good at it? And then also that work-life balance. Are you used to continually exercising those muscles? So in times of crisis, you can really put those to test. And then lastly, we need to talk about dual career parents, and we need to value untitled leaders. So that's pretty much everything that I had today. I do want to finish with a call to action, and that's, you know, what's going to be your step towards impactful change? Maybe you think, you know, that you don't know someone who's a STEM mom or working parent. I don't know. I'd find that really hard to believe. So there's definitely one small thing that you can do. And I'm sure that there's many small things that you can do. It takes many people doing small things to create big change. And lastly, I'll finish off to say I have a report that's written about this entire year's project. It's been peer reviewed by people in this space who write policy and work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm trying to get it formatted, and I will be sharing it out hopefully by June, but I work full time and I have 2 children, so I'm very, very busy, and I do all of this work in my free time. So please watch for that and reach out if you have any questions. Amber, I don't know, do we open it up for questions, or I'll hand it back to you?
Yeah, we'll definitely open up for questions. Thank you so much for sharing. This is so impactful, and all the insights and everything that you shared was awesome. So yeah, I'll open it up to everyone. If you have any questions or you want to share anything with Julie, please raise your hand or unmute, and yeah, let's open up the floor for discussion.
I think I saw one hand. Peyton, did you have a hand raised? I thought you had. Oh, okay, sorry. I haven't been able to monitor the comments here, so.
That's okay. There's been lots of good comments in the chat. A lot of people said valuable insights, great presentation, such an important message.
Alan has his hand up.
Oh, Helen. Okay.
Hi, how are you doing? It was a really good presentation. I was wondering though, because I'm assuming from your what you presented that that you were the parent that took the time off, for maternity leave. So is there any research or any discussions that you had that talked about, is it different for returning to work for a man, that if he took the parental leave rather than the spouse?
Yeah, so we held a hold. I think topic 14 was on parental leave, and we had 3 maybe of our 3 submissions from men who had taken leave. And so of course, leave for men is not nearly as common. I will say for me personally, on our first, my husband was on expat in the US, and so I joined him there, and that was our personal choice we made for our family. And then on my second leave, it was actually COVID, and my company had gone through like a massive reorg, and his had a mass layoff. And so the decision, was for me to stay at home. I will say though, in the last 3 years, the amount of men taking parental leave has been huge. And so in the States last year, there was, because the US does not have paid parental leave, a lot of companies stepped up to the plate and decided that they would offer, especially in the tech space. And there was this massive movement called Show Us Your Leave. And it created this almost like FOMO impact, where the companies were creating these leaves, and they were creating them for mothers and fathers. And so fathers started to avail of that. And we've seen a huge knock-on effect here in Canada. I know I work at a major energy operator, and men are taking their parental leave now. They get like this 6 weeks, and they're really availing of it in the past year. I have never seen anything like it in my 15-year career. So I think that that's positive. But to speak to your question, in our survey, the men also found it really difficult to transition back. In some places you lose access to your email. You can't even use your cell phone. You're really bored. I think that's a huge one, right? Because there's not a lot of like daddy and me programs like there are all these mommy and me programs. And so what I've heard is men who actually take parental leave, they don't have any networks and people to connect with, and they find it really lonely and kind of boring. So I didn't do a ton of research into that, Alan. I think that's like a whole other project in itself, but we need more men to take leave, and progress is slow, and we're seeing some progress in that space, but I think it's incredibly challenging for men as well, not just women.
Did you find, because I noticed one thing that you said is some men were taking about 6 weeks. Was that all they were taking, was 6 weeks rather than like the whole term?
So it's fairly complicated. And if anyone on the line knows the new rules, I'm not sure what the new rules are, but a lot of companies are doing like you can take a 6 week and still kind of collect your pay, but otherwise you need to share your EI. So you get 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the same amount of money if you take 12 months or 18 months, but if you take 18, that that amount of money is spread, so it's less. But the mother and the father, they need to share those weeks. And so for some companies, you can take I think it's the 6 weeks concurrently when the baby is born, which is a really great time to take it for the family. And so a lot of people opt to do that, or you can save it and you can take it at the end. So if your wife returns to work, you can take the remaining amount.
Okay. One other thing that I heard, because I used to be the diversity equity chairman for Canadian Pacific, and one of the other things is it was a very interesting example. But we had a family that was moved from our network from the U.S. I think it was from Texas to Calgary. And one of the problems that they existed because it's very common to have like a housekeeper or a nanny in some states. And when this couple moved here, it's not common and it's a lot more expensive for them to have it here. And the extra amount of stress that it added for the family, because both of them were full-time working parents, and to not have that additional network, and the amount of stress that actually caused as well was quite significant.
And that's a fantastic point. And so we had 15 discussions, and we actually have another 15 on a backlog. I had to cap it because I just have so much time, but one of them was expat relocations. And so when people move to new countries, how does that impact, right? Often when you move to a new country, there's like a lead career person, and then kind of like the supportive parent is often what happens. And if they're lucky, both can work. But yeah, in the US, I think it is more common to have the nannies because it's such short parental leave. I mean, some people just get 2 weeks, and it's difficult to find daycares that can accommodate that and provide. And then childcare in Canada, we do have new, I think it's incentives that have been brought in, but every province is doing something a little bit different. And one of the knock-on effects is that we're seeing is that there's just not enough daycare space. And so that's a problem in itself, right? If you can't even get into daycare and you can't find suitable childcare, that's a huge stressor, not even in your ability to physically go to work, but in like your ability in how you feel about leaving your child at these certain centers, right? So yeah, I mean, I think I could have written a thesis on all of this. There are so many underlying factors and contributing variables, et cetera.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Peter.
Hi. I just wanted to point out, first of all, thank you very much. Good and insightful presentation. I have 2 daughters in my family that are going through similar things, so that's very recognizable. I would say 2 things. As an example, Microsoft is an organization that I think has pioneered in this space quite well. And, you know, the whole concept of project management office and PMI certifications, that's where I think some of this should be brought into that, because it still doesn't really exist there. So that's where, you know, your project management offices recognizes individual contributor skills and then the balance and the rest of it. So it's something that to look at for sure. And again, Microsoft is a really good example of how this has been implemented. So there's some companies out there that have been doing this successfully. And then of course, some that haven't figured this out yet. And they promote people that are actually just willing to put in more hours and not necessarily have the skills to be a leader.
Exactly. And that's such a good point. And so 2 comments on this. One of our participants actually worked for Amazon, and she shared with us, she's based out of New York. And so she got 6 months leave through Amazon. I'm not sure if it was paid or, you know, her job was secured. So she took 6 months, and the 3 months prior, she was assigned the person who would take over for the 6 months she was away. And so they had a 3-month handover so that they got to know each other. And then this person took on the responsibilities while the mother was away. They had a touch point every single month. So the mother could stay connected. She didn't have to attend if she didn't want it, but if she wanted to know what was going on within the company, they had a 1-hour meeting every month that she got updated on. Here's your projects, here's what's happening organizationally. And then when she came back, they had another 3-month overlap. So if, you know, the baby was up all night and she was exhausted, she could rely on this person to kind of come in and fill in. And that was, you know, the expectation was to use that as much as you needed in 3 months. And so that was really unique. I have found that the tech companies were very forward in these thinking and these programmings, but I've seen in the last week or so some disappointing news, especially from, I think it's like Meta and Twitter. They had 20 weeks paid leave and now they're back down to 2. And so I think with all of the cuts and the shakeup in tech, it's going to have this knock-on effect of not really supporting parents like they have. So that's really disappointing.
Yeah, they not only did that, but they slammed kind of dual career people with the same company, just took them out because they were on this program. So they just eliminated what they thought was a problem in terms of productivity. Because there's a lot of this attitude that says we need the multiplier effect, and that's why they push people into leadership, is because they want that kind of mentoring of the next employees and that sort of stuff. So anyway, I've gone on too long. I'll leave it the floor.
No, thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think we'll head into some breakout rooms. But before we do, I just want to say thank you so much, Julie, for being here today and sharing. And I look forward to the report coming out and so we can share it and look at it. And yeah, we'll definitely have more of these discussions in the rainforest. And yeah, thank you for sharing today and being here. And hopefully stick around for the breakout rooms. We will probably go into 1 or 2, and then we'll come back here around 12:55 for some community announcements. So if you have any announcements, have those ready and queued up, and I will open the breakout rooms right now. Hello, welcome back, everyone. Okay, everyone's slowly coming back. I think everyone's back. Welcome back. So community announcements, I have 2. Next week, Lunch Without Lunch will be in person at Platform Calgary in Classroom 2. We'll have Daniel Monzon from Catapult Startups. So come check it out in person. Of course, you can join online, but in person's a lot more fun, I promise. If you've ever wanted to be a host or a guest on the Leaders Innovators Big Idea podcast, that's also a lot of fun. Please feel free to reach out to Al Del Degan, or you can reach out to me or Bridget. We'd love to have you host an episode. And I'll pass it on to Ross.
I'm just wanting to bring back the discussion from the breakout rooms. Ty, you might be able to pitch it a little bit better than I would, just because I've been taking notes and hectic in the background here.
So basically, ironically, in our breakout group, we had 4 men. So we wanted to share this idea a little bit more widely to make sure to have buy-in from everyone. But there potentially could be a role for government to provide a maternity relief grants for startups and scale-ups as a way to try to reduce barriers for women being able to enter the tech space and make it so that way it's not a conflict with family planning. So if there's anyone that would want to further this conversation and maybe try to do a little bit of lobbying and try to get some policy in place, we'd love to see if there's any engagement on that.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love that. So please reach out. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if I can support in any way from the work I've done, I'm so happy to support that. And in our breakout room, look for Hamish and Andrew. We were talking about, Andrew, why don't you have your idea?
Sure, just as sort of a similar idea, but we're talking about sort of barriers to women being able to go to an interview. And I said, wouldn't it be great if there's an organization in Calgary that had funding and babysitters set up so that if somebody had to take an afternoon off to go to an interview, if they could just contact the organization and have a babysitter paid for and lined up, and just be able to drop into their house and they can go to their interview and not have to worry about their looking after their kids.
I love that. These are all great discussions, and I think we should definitely keep collaborating and make this happen. So just keep reaching out to each other, reach out to us, anything that we can do, like a rainforest. We'll we'll do it. And yeah, let's keep this going. That's really awesome. I love it because I don't get to join the breakout room. So it was like coming back and hearing what everyone talked about it. It was really great. So thank you for sharing. And that's the top of the hour. So thank you everyone for coming. And thank you again, Julie, for being here. And we'll see you hopefully next week.
All right,
I,
thanks
ju-
everyone.
I just posted the Collectively Tangled Mental Health event that's on Monday over at the Hunter Hub, and the registration there. It's a cheap event at 3 hours and presented by some of the female leaders of the Rainforest Group. So that's in the chat box right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.